think we're getting really good at these intros.
We've got a marketing team that really knows what they're doing now. Hey folks, we got Professor P here. Peter West is here to teach us more about Peplink, and today we're going to talk about InTouch. I'm Travis Sturek. Thank you all for joining us. We just played a video for you folks to kind of break down what InTouch is, what it does, and how it helps people. And we're obviously going to dive into that topic today and talk about that in a lot more detail. Again, these Peplink University series really just focused on hands-on. How do you do these things with Peplink? We've got all these great features, and this is our time to show you how to do that and how you can use this day-to-day to help your customers. So with that, Peter, I'm going to hand it over to you and we can dive in.
Yes, thank you. And I was introduced to InTouch quite a while ago in this concept, and it's kind of been around, I believe, 8.2.1 started allowing some InTouch connectivity features, and so InTouch has been around, but I don't think the value proposition of InTouch is being adequately communicated. And so we wanted to have this InTouch conversation, because I feel like it's, there's customers that have Peplink, are paying, have Essential Care and InControl, and have SpeedFusion Connect or SFC Protect, and InTouch replaces gear out there that allows out-of-band management for free, really. I mean, if you're already paying for the Peplink and you're already paying for Essential Care, it's basically free. And so I'm really excited to talk about this today. So what is InTouch? InTouch is out-of-band management centralized and in control. That being said, configure anything from anywhere like you're there. Basically out-of-band management for the techie people, right? The idea with InTouch is we have HTTP, HTTPS, SSH, Telnet, VNC, RDP, and RS-232 capabilities via InControl, configurable dynamically on the fly. And so you can access basically anything on your infrastructure right from InControl, even third-party devices. So I've got my Cisco switch here that I'm gonna show you guys here in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think this is awesome because we've had InControl for like literally over a decade, right? We've been doing this cloud management and zero-touch provisioning, right? You just ship boxes all over the world and they magically just get programmed and configured. You don't have to send people all over. And InTouch is really kind of like extending that capability beyond the Peplink, right? To all the other stuff behind the Peplink that that's the whole point of your Peplink network, is to connect those devices. And so, yeah, I agree, Peter. This is just exciting, powerful technology, and it's really just simple and easy to use. And so
let's be honest, not everybody's running Peplink switches and Peplink APs anyways. I mean, as much as we would love to pretend they are, they're not. And so the ability to manage your entire infrastructure from a single pane of glass, like InControl, is from an IT administration standpoint, is really cool. So InTouch eliminates the needs for engineers, VPN servers, extra software typically needed to manage your devices. Really here, InTouch allows us to get rid of the management VLAN or allows us to remove holes in our network. There's no public IPs, no firewalls ports to open up, no default gateway to set up. This will work on non-gateway connected devices. And that is pretty amazing to think about. Now, if you have an IoT device that has an IP address and a subnet mask, but no gateway, isn't routable to the internet, that's okay, because the Peplink on that same VLAN is layer 2. So it can access that device even if there's no gateway programmed.
Yeah, I think this is just one more step. We see this a lot in our industry of, Peplink is helping people modernize all of their existing networks. And so you can add 5G to these existing networks. You can add all these capabilities, and InTouch is just one more example of that, right? You can take a network that maybe was deployed 20 years ago, 15 years ago, right? Never intended to actually touch the internet. And now you can build in secure remote access to that legacy network that never used to have that capability. And again, we're not adding new servers, we're not adding new software, right? We're just using the Peplink that's there or putting a Peplink there, and that's really all the infrastructure needed. But
it's nuts. So if you look at the old school out of band management capabilities, usually there's some sort of primary ISP. A lot of times, and I've seen with another piece of equipment, you might even have another cellular platform, another bill that you have to pay to plug into their SIM card or to their device to add this out of band management capabilities via cellular. But the downside is that's another SIM card, another antenna, and more connectivity, and it's not seamless between carrier connectivity. So the old school connectivity is you have your ISP, you're connecting in, and then you have to have some sort of VPN. And if that ISP fails, you're then failing over to some sort of backup, or in a lot of cases, no solution. With InTouch, sorry.
One thing that I love to talk about here is just, I think the irony is kind of huge for me, is that, you know, with out-of-band management, really what you're doing is you're building two networks, right? You've got your network that serves all your users, right? And so that's got switches and routers and internet connection, maybe one, maybe two. But then all these companies built these out-of-band management networks, which were deployed right next to that user network. But the out-of-band management network was only for the administrators to get in there when the user network broke, right? And so that out-of-band management network is a fully separate network. It's a whole nother set of routers and things and connections, right? Like you said, either SIM cards or physical wireline circuits. But when that main network fails, the out-of-band management network doesn't actually fail over for the users, right? It's just a backdoor for the administrators to get in. It doesn't actually help the users get back online. It doesn't protect them. So you're building two networks and you're not really adding any actual redundancy, or you're not improving the uptime really, other than figuring out what's wrong when it's broken. So there's a better way.
And the better way is SpeedFusion or SFC Protect, right? So taking advantage of our SpeedFusion cloud environment and the already existing Peplink infrastructure, usually with SIM cards, with all of our modern technologies, you can now use InControl and SFC in that same bonding pane that you're using to connect for out of band for resiliency, can now be used for out of band management. And so InTouch allows us to utilize existing technologies to establish that resilient connectivity or that out of band access. And so if your primary ISP fails, it's going to go right over to your backup or cellular or even SFC LTE, and you're going to maintain that resilient access regardless of the state of your internet connections, which means you can access your IP KVMs, your IP PDUs, cameras, and things like that seamlessly. You need to reboot your cable modem or your carrier firewall or whatever. You can simply just log in and then reset that device as if you were sitting on the network.
Yeah, it's just powerful because now you can invest your money into one network that makes everybody's jobs easier and more productive. And yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. That's a really good point, Travis, is that you're not buying two systems. It's the existing system that you already have deployed, and you're just adding out-of-band management to it. Funny enough, though, I've used InTouch to access Peplink routers that were being blocked by a firewall upstream. So, InControl uses 5246 to access to establish that remote web admin. And so I had customers where they had like two sites, and on their headquarters site, their upstream firewall was blocking outbound 5246. So I was using SpeedFusion, which did have allowed 4500 inbound. I was using SpeedFusion with InTouch going into a remote site that had cellular connectivity to then access the LAN of the remote router. So I just put in the IP address of my Peplink router, my Peplink router on the other side of the tunnel, and I was able to actually access the LAN of that device as if I was sitting local to that network. And so it was really kind of neat to be able to get into a Peplink router that was being blocked by a firewall and make changes to it. So kind of a fun like tech troubleshooting toolkit there. I drew this. I apologize, it's not as fancy as all the other cool marketing drawings. This is a tech drawing from an engineer. But the idea is, if we have a BR2 Pro 5G, actually that would be a BR1, but I didn't have a drawing for it. So pretend that's a BR2 Pro 5G with two 5G modems in it, or SIM cards, connecting to SpeedFusion Protect. Here I've got two Cisco switches linked up, and and then you can plug in a USB to RS-232 for console access, which is really cool. But I also have a camera and a server. So on my InTouch, I can have my USB 1 programmed for RS-232. I can SSH into those two switches. I can RDP into a server, or I can HTTP into my camera. And I'm going to demonstrate this actually in real time after the slide here. But the idea is, using InTouch and InControl, I simply just set the protocol and the IP address of what I'm trying to connect to. And then using InTouch, I can then log into those devices via any web browser. And what's really nice, and I'm a phone geek, so I've got, I love my phones, and I've got the big screen, fold phone, and I can use InTouch and provide tech support in real time using RDP and web access. And it's very convenient to be able to just open up your screen, get in without any VPNs or any PC with special protocols. I simply open up InTouch, click the device I want to connect to, and I now have access. So I find that to be very enjoyable. So here we talk is a deployment scenario where we talk about cellular connectivity plus remote site management. And so you have a main site here with a BR1 Mini. It has an IP camera and it's using RS-232 for management. So we have an Ethernet line and a cellular line and a firewall, but then we use InControl for centralized management. So the administrator can use HTTPS or, like I just mentioned on InTouch, to log right into that device behind the firewall because of InControl's outbound going connectivity. And you can see a larger branch site with two HD Dome 5Gs, bonded cellular connecting in to phones or RS-232, RDP, SSH, and Telnet sessions. And so the idea is, InControl and InTouch brings all of these together to one pane of glass for your NOC administrator to be able to access those devices seamlessly. A couple of verticals this hits. Travis, I don't know if you have comments on this one. I specialize mostly in the enterprise and broadcast and healthcare worlds, but it's kind of neat to see kind of this unified spread of areas, because you have IoT, which is obviously a big keyword these days, but you also have enterprise and connectivity, where you might have large camera networks or phone networks where you need to log in and access those devices. I find it very useful in my large environments accessing legacy switches, where I'm trying to manage or centralize the management of my entire infrastructure. So that's where I find the most use in this. And so by building this PowerPoint, we had a lot of fun looking at really a lot of the possibilities. I didn't even think about, for example, meters and sensors, pulling up the web admin page of a remote VoIP phone to change the configuration. I thought that was a kind of a neat idea there. Once again, the switches and point of sale terminals and stuff like that I do all the time, as well as servers. So, but yeah, there's a lot of verticals here. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's pretty universal, right? All of us are trying to build things way outside of our four walls, and it's frustrating if you have to reach out to somebody out on that other side, because you need somebody who kind of knows what they're doing, knows what they're looking for, and then you got to sit there and work with them on the phone, and you're tying two people up, right? So there's so many different ways that we see customers trying to deal with this kind of remote distributed network. And historically, they're buying different systems, they're buying management software, they're deploying VPNs, right? They're going through all these different things, and they're frankly sick of it, right? It's just one more thing they have to maintain. So fleet, mobile, enterprise, small business, it's just all over the place that people need to get into other devices that are out at these locations. And when you can do it yourself from a phone or a computer, wherever you are, yeah, it makes your job easier and makes users' jobs a lot easier too, because they don't have to talk to you and they can do their job.
What's interesting is, I don't know if you remember, but we had this really interesting talk, Travis, at the Peplink Tech Summit last year. And we were talking about InControl and empowering the IT administrator to simplify network management, right? To simplify troubleshooting, all the built-in tools and in control that made detecting network issues easier and more streamlined. And we talk about handling thousands or tens of thousands of nodes all across the world. And InTouch just brings that even further integrated. I have a client that has they're running Peplink SDXs and EPXs at all of their headquarters, data centers, and branch sites, but they're running Cisco switches throughout the infrastructure. And I have another client that's running Netgear switches throughout their entire infrastructure. And but in both of these scenarios, the Netgear switch customer and the Cisco switch customer, I simply added on the Cisco switches, I added a telnet session. On the Netgear switches, I added an HTTPS session. But now my devices are not open to the world. I can simply use InTouch, and I can manage those switches as if I was sitting and managing a Peplink switch. I mean, not as easy, but pretty easily. And I find that to be incredibly powerful. Just making that single access pane for your IT support and management.
Yep. Yeah. And the fact that you're not using public IPs to do that, you're not port forwarding, you're not opening holes into your network, because, you know, things like Telnet's not really a secure protocol anymore, right? It hasn't been for a long time. And so we can wrap the in control security layer around it. And yeah, you're not opening that up to the world. You're not putting yourself at risk. You're using it in a quiet, private space, but yet it's easy to do.
We have another video here. Maximize it. Oh, 8.2 firmware. I thought it was 8.2.1. I'm going to show that and talk about it. If you don't mind, I'm going to skip that portion of it because I'm actually going to demonstrate this in real time instead of just music. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Out of band, man. The interesting thing is, obviously we have the marketing sides and you have the tech, the idea is out of band connectivity, and this is now being increased with SpeedFusion Connect. But it's an interesting slide though.
Yeah, let's dive into your demo though.
Yeah, let's dive into the demo. I like that idea, because I think it'll be more fun. Okay, so InTouch requires a few different, a few things. One, you have to be running a Peplink router running 8.2 firmware. I've got my EPX. I use this when I was talking about synergy mode. So this is running the 830 RC5, and I've got just cellular connectivity. And so you can see this guy here. There's no other connections coming in here. I've unhooked my Ethernet connections. I unhooked my Starlinks, etc. And it's no just
public
running.
IPs.
Yep. Yeah. There's no public IPs at all. So the idea is that we're just connecting via cellular connectivity for this purpose of this demo. The next thing is we have to define what we're connecting. So, for example, I have a can you see me okay? Sort of. I mean, I know this my video might be smaller.
Yeah, you said small, but we can see you clear.
Okay. So I've got a Cisco switch that I connected here. It's not Ethernet, nothing plugged into the Ethernet, just a console cable. With 830, we now have the ability to USB StarTech 8 or 16 port RS-232. So I've got two RS-232s, one going to my Peplink switch and one going to the Cisco switch. Then I have an IP camera up here that is, funny enough, on a completely separate IP subnet. So I'll show you how I figured that. So on the bottom of the camera, it was it's statically assigned 192.168.5.163. And if you look at my screen, you'll notice my untagged LAN is 172.16.253. and my management network is 172.16.188, which is neither of those IP addresses. And so I'm gonna kind of knock out a really cool show of even better out of band management.
I love this little detail, Peter, because this is such a common scenario, especially with IP cameras, right? They were deployed to not talk to the internet or any gateway, and now we can actually
I thought that was really neat that I was able to get this online without rebuilding my entire network. So once you have defined what you want to connect to, I have an RS-232, I have an IP. Now also, and if you haven't seen my video on it, the EPX is hypervisor. So I'm also running a, let's see if this is, just for fun, and since we have this running right now. So I'm running an Ubuntu VM on my PC, and that has my virtual machine manager. I can actually connect in here. I can connect into my my EPX, and I've got a Windows 2020 or Windows Server 2022 VM running as a Hyper-V or hypervisor, KVM hypervisor on this EPX. And I have a whole video on that, not the purpose of this call, but I can demonstrate RDP access. So you're going to go into the router. It's important. So here's my Synergy group. You can't configure InTouch from the group or the org. You have to be in the device that is connected to the device you want to manage. So I've got my group, I've got my EPX, my dome, and my switch. Then I can go into my EPX, go to settings, InTouch. And if you have a USB RS-232 connected, you're going to see it'll actually look like that. It'll say serial port based. If you don't see this, that means it's not plugged into the USB on the back or the front of the device. So you want to see this. Then you'll see the list of serial ports and the settings. This was originally very misleading to me, which is why I wanted to demo it versus watch a video. These grayed out sections, you actually click on the grayed out name, and then you have to turn it on. And then once you turn it on, I can say USB 1.3. I can set my speed like 9600, 881N, and oh no. Hit OK. And now it'll turn blue once it's enabled. So that's important. The other thing is when you click on this, I can actually assign a group to this. So this switch, I could say Peplink switches, for example, hit OK. And then for this USB 1.2, I could say switches. And then on this USB 1.2 as well, I could say switch IDF second floor or whatever I wanted to do there. So I've assigned a group and a name. Hit OK, hit save changes. Now, if I go back to my group level and I scroll down, look, here's switches. Cisco switch IDF second floor, Peplink switch A, and then my ungrouped, my server 2022, my PTZ camera, and my USB 1.3. So once you configure the in control on the device, if you have a whole bunch of devices listed here, you can then unify those all into different groups. So if you have 7 or 8 Peplink routers, all of them managing different devices, and you give them common group names like switches, Peplink switches, and ungrouped, you can now access that. Like you could have the first floor and the third floor right here. And so that's really, really nice, in my opinion, being able to roll all those InTouch devices into a single grouping in the group dashboard here.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because like the administrator might not be the one that's actually using this, right? The administrator's setting it up, but it might be some, lower level technician that's coming in and logging into the phones or the switches, and, organizing it for them is really useful instead of having to have them figure out which Peplink is that switch behind, right? That's not going to be obvious in a lot of cases.
And that's a really good point. Under your group settings, you can create a user that only has InTouch right here. You see this InTouch user. So I could create a user for a level 1 admin or my VoIP admin and give them only access to the InTouch devices. So they're not able to log in and mess with any of my Peplink routers or switches. They can only look at the InTouch devices. So there's a new role that's also been assigned called InTouch user that will only give them access to the InTouch devices on this group. So once I've done this, so this switch is, we've already talked about, is RS-232. So I've got it plugged in to the console in the back, and I've got it plugged into port 2 on my StarTech. So if I click on this, it's going to open up a new web browser. And there's a couple things that are really cool about this. One, this URL up top, which normally I don't share, but I do I want to show you this. This URL is bookmarkable. So I can click my favorites and say switch IDF second floor. And now I have this saved right here. So I can now come back to this in my favorites and access this device. So now I'm in my switch. I can enable the switch. I can show run. It's going to build the configuration. And I have my switch as if it was sitting right there. And now I have my switch. And
the other thing that I love about the hyperlink, the URL, Peter, is what we just talked about before, is being able to give different people access privileges to just InTouch. And so, you know, I can create a user that's just an InTouch user, and then I can just message them this hyperlink, right? I can send them an email or just on chat, I can just drop them that hyperlink, and it's going to take them right to that InControl login screen. And then it's going to pull this right up for them. So it's useful for me, but you can build really powerful, you know, kind of dashboards or landing pages for these other users that you might not have managing all these other devices.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of time, like I was actually working with a customer or partner, I guess, on playing around with EIGRP and OSPF. And I actually added the user as an InTouch user in my group, then just sent them a link to the out of band management, and boom, I was done. That was it. So it was super easy for me to quickly deploy and get remote support on this switch with another user. I found that to be really neat.
Or just think like a third-party vendor, right? Maybe you've got a new application that you put on your Windows server and it's just not working, right? And I can't figure it out. And then, oh my gosh, how am I gonna? I gotta install TeamViewer on my server. Like, no, I can't do that, right? Like, I can't.
Well, and then
open up
security ports and things like that. So with InTouch, so this is my server 2022 sitting, running inside my EPX. Then I'm RDPing it using InTouch without any firewall ports open in the world to the public. So this server is running completely isolated and secure. There's no open ports to it, and so I can log into it and access. Now I can use this server to access other systems if I wanted to, or even one of my customers uses these as read-only domain controllers. That's a whole nother topic. But I mean, I'm in a web browser and I have my server running, and that is pretty cool in my opinion.
Definitely useful.
And then if I come back in here, here's a camera example. So this is pulling up an HTTP web page of that camera that's sitting up there. And so you can see it comes in. I can then log in, go to my configuration. I can set up all the settings here. I can even manipulate the PTZ portion of it. And so it's actually moving right now. You can't see that, but I can. So this is important. There are some webcam protocols that are not supported yet inside InTouch. So if you get a black screen, this is not built for all of, I guess, the different protocols, because there's so many different camera protocols. But I use this for configuration on this camera, and that's why I wanted to do this, because we do SRT a lot. And so I can log in and mess with, enable my SRT and my Ethernet settings on this network. And then I mentioned this camera is kind of interesting. This camera is running a static IP address of 192.168.5.163. My network I just want to show this because I think it's so cool. I just need to get into this machine. So my network is not 192.168.5. It is 172.16. So how am I managing a 192.168.5 device? If I go into my device, remote web admin dashboard, so I'm logged into my Peplink router. I can go into my network settings and my VLAN, and look at this. So if I click on VLAN 0 here, which is untagged, I was doing another demo. You can click here to configure additional IP addresses or additional IP subnets. So all I did is click the question mark, enable a subnet, and added 192.168.5.1 to my untagged LAN. Now I have my router, this interface is using both IP addresses. Now I was able to log in. Now I could log into that router, enable DHCP or change it to 172.16.253 or whatever I need to do. I just thought that was cool. We talked about out-of-band management and getting access to the devices. I just thought that was a neat troubleshooting step that I went through today to set up this demo.
So many times I feel like we're tasked with just this impossible set of requirements as managed service providers and network engineers, right? You need to come in and you need to make my network better. It can never go down and all this. And oh, by the way, you can't change anything that's there, right? You can't change IP addresses or anything. And so that's what these tools are there for, right? You can actually live with those requirements and still deliver, the solution that customers are looking for. And this is just one more example of that.
So do we want to try to answer some questions?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So would there be any way to do SCP FTP type? Currently, we're not doing file transfers through. Technically, you could pull up like a web FTP, like a file, like a web-based interface, but FTP is currently not supported. The currently supported protocols as of the making of this video. So if I go into my EPX and go back to InTouch, IP-based add. So I have HTTP, HTTPS, SSH, Telnet, RDP, and VNC. So those are the currently supported IP protocols that are supported inside InTouch.
Yeah, and I think, that question really gets down to the VPN side of it, right? InTouch is an alternative way to a VPN to reach a lot of these protocols, but a VPN would be an alternative way to securely and privately use one of those protocols like FTP, where you're doing more than just, clicking in a web browser, right? Where you actually need that protocol to spit out on the other side that same way. That would be, to me, that's more of an application of Speed Fusion. But it's still a super valid question, because sometimes that's hard to do, right? And so
one of the things related to that, though, is we in our corporate environment, we actually use InTouch to access Admin Center, so that we're securing access to our servers via just InTouch, and then we configure our FTP, and IIS and things like that. But but no, we don't at the file transfer. Another question was, what type of connectivity is it, serial or IP? Both. So we support serial-based connectivity and IP-based connectivity. That was earlier in the demo. So
yeah, that's an important point too. Is that's a big reason why we're talking today. Is 8.3 adds this serial capability.
Exactly.
And so InTouch has been here for a little while, but now we're opening this up. So there's these third-party USB adapters that you can plug into a Peplink router with a USB port, and then they've got multiple serial ports on them. And so you can connect to a whole bunch of different serial devices behind any existing Peplink that's got a USB port. So
somebody asked if we can use InTouch to access the web interface of the SIM injector. Yes. Yes, you can. That is also a pet peeve of mine. And it's a very fair question. And I use InTouch to access the web admin of several Peplink devices in different scenarios. And that's a very fair question. And it's an unfortunate one, but there is reasoning behind that. The SIM injectors processor and things like that, the way that it's designed. But InTouch will allow access to the SIM injector, anything with a web browser. So once again, you can just do HTTP or HTTPS and log in. I've even used InTouch to access devices on the WAN of a Peplink router. So like say I have a dome that's not connecting, now we can use Synergy and it's irrelevant. But if you had a dome that's not connecting, I can actually use InTouch to log in on the WAN. So InTouch is definitely something that we can use to access the SIM Injector Mini. Access to remote equipment for command center.
So I heard another interesting idea the other day from a customer, and I love this because there's just lots of ways people can use this. Sometimes we have customers that wind up in a different scenario where there isn't a Peplink router on site, but maybe they've came in as a service provider and they've added a Peplink switch or a Peplink access point. And so those are all examples of times where you can use InTouch as well. You don't actually need the Peplink router. You can use that switch to be your kind of InTouch gateway and have these same capabilities, even if you as the service provider don't have a router on site. And so again, it just gives you more flexibility and capabilities as you jump into these different scenarios with your customers.
Exactly. The StarTech I'm using is the industrial StarTech. I just bought on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and search StarTech or USB to RS-232 industrial, they make it 8-port and a 16-port version. Both of those note they work. There is a specific set of chipset required for the USB to RS-232. And is there a knowledge base article on that?
I think it's mentioned in the release notes of 830. I'm just digging.
Yeah, I know there's a specific, not every USB to RS-232 will work. It's a specific chipset, but for the purpose of this video, the StarTech and industrial 8-port and 16-port do work, and confirmed.
Yeah, it's FTTDI is the name of the chipset, but I'm digging for the more specific link to give people that.
We got a question. Will be supporting IP RS-232 gateway? That I don't know. We could definitely do a feature request on that one, but it's not supported yet.
I think that's a good time to just bring this up. This little blue flag in the right corner, in the right side of the screen. Yeah, this thing does something, by the way. Yeah, like right here, this is good.
In control, there's a feedback option. You can just click that, and it's going to take a little screenshot of your page here, and you can literally just say, "Can we add IP RS-232 to InTouch?" Hit send feedback, give it justification. And just so you know, if that's something multiple people on this webinar want to do, if you submit it, you'll flood Michael, and he might be mad at me for saying to do this. But that you'll see the demand for the need. But currently it's not supported.
And likewise, if you're having like down here, like we talked about IP cameras or things like that, like there are thousands of devices you can use InTouch with. And so we just don't know every device is going to be 100% compatible. So when you run into those problems, that tool is the fastest way to get that fixed. It's not a dead end. I've never seen an InTouch device where a customer said, "Oh, this didn't work," and then a week later we didn't have it working. So I'm not promising every device will work, but it's again, so far we've not found devices that we can't make that work better with. And so that button
on that, and on that as well, I was setting up even my PTZ camera here, and there was something in the JavaScript that wasn't allowing me to log in. I just click the feedback, said can't log in, and I would say less than 24 hours later, they had already fixed it. And this is a brand new setup, and it worked when I moved it. So it wasn't specific. It was they fixed whatever that was in InTouch. Two really good questions. Is there one that has more than one serial port? Yes, this is an 8 serial port RS-232. So yes, but then another really good question. What do your InTouch specific outbound policy rules look like? And that's important. I don't have InTouch. This is using SpeedFusion Connect, and it's not using outbound policy rules. So if I pull up my router and I go to my advanced settings here and outbound policy, that's none. So I'm running on auto. InTouch natively uses SpeedFusion Connect to establish the tunnel. And so I'm not running any special outbound policies. I'm simply just turned on the feature. And if you get an error that says you've exceeded your SFC quota, it's because you no longer have either a valid essential care subscription, or you've used up your quota on your SFC. Like, it comes with a certain number of gigabytes. So you just need to purchase, but it uses SpeedFusion Connect natively. So there are no policies. Good job, Andre. So I think that's most of the questions that I can answer via.
I just answered one, and I think somebody else has already kind of answered that too, about using the RS-232 port to kind of like feed out to another device, and that's kind of different than what we're talking about here. This is just for user console access, so you can interact with a text interface on the other side, send commands, receive feedback. If you're using something more live, like a telemetry application where you need to take sensor data from here and receive it over there, that's UART functionality. It's using a serial port, but in a different purpose.
Correct. And in which case you'd want to use SpeedFusion and then connect via IP to that, or some variant thereof.
Yep.
And that's important. Like, I have this is enabled. This EPX is connected via. I've got my WAN smoothing, but I also have I have a connection right here back to my office. And so I've got SpeedFusion Connect enabled, but I also have IP. Sorry, my brain. I have access via IP via SpeedFusion. So if I pull up OBS, for example, it's kind of a neat use case for remote connectivity. So now you have to pretend that I have two people here, but I'm only one. So if I have my camera set up here, so there's my camera streaming, I can then pull up InTouch. Like Travis could pull up InTouch, log into this device remotely, and then move the camera, and then it's going to move the camera here. So you're going to have the camera feed can be moved. You can see my big, massive. So if I do that, I'm aiming it at me, and you should see me in a second here when it pulls up. So there you go. And so you can have one person controlling the camera and another person viewing it or streaming via SpeedFusion. So that's different. You're not going to stream SpeedFusion or stream SRT traffic over InTouch. And that kind of goes into the same concept of the RS-232. InTouch is used for out-of-band management, more so than live communications, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I love that, Peter, because like remote production is such a huge trend in the video and broadcast industry, but it's that same concept in any industry almost, right? I need somebody with a certain skill set over here to help me over in some totally different place, and so this is just that glue to make that pretty much brainless for those people to jump in and help. Exactly.
And InTouch is supported on almost every. I don't believe there's any products that don't support InTouch. Our bonding routers obviously are the kind of the coolest routers for it, because you get to take advantage of SpeedFusion Connect, like the UBR Plus, the BR2 Pro 5G. I mean, if everybody wants to buy an EPX, I would be more than happy to sell you EPXs for that as well. So no issues there. But so here's my lab environment that I've set up right here that you guys were looking at. And are there any other questions? I might actually finish this topic early.
I'm just looking through it. I don't see any other.
Yes, that will work. That's the industrial one. So you can see I've already purchased this previously. And they have the 8-port and the 16-port industrial ones, and the 2.1.
You can see that FTDI mention up there in the title there. That's the name of the chipset that is needed.
Oh, there you go. USB to DB9. So, but yes, this is the one that I purchase often. You can see, there you go. I purchased it right there. So, and that's the one that works well.
Yep, I've got that one. I think the other one that I'll throw out there just as food for thought is, as this gets bigger and people start thinking more about what they can do with this, I think the API side is another layer that we haven't really dug into yet, but being able to actually programmatically build these and extend these types of connections out to other users again, I think as you look bigger into more sophisticated ways to do this, that's very much something that could be possible as well. So, you know, again, that's just more curiosity from my side, but I think over and over again, our users have proven that there's tons of creativity out there and how people use these tools. And so we'll just kind of hang that out there and see what ideas people come up with on that.
And I will add too that in our data center, we actually use InTouch to access our management backplane of all of our servers. So most servers or enterprise computers have an iDRAC or some form of IP KVM almost built right into the server or the motherboard. We actually just plug these into our management VLAN, and then we use InTouch now. So instead of opening those up via VPN, we actually now block the port access to that platform, and then we use InTouch to do that. So increasing our security layer, and then we now have VLAN inter-VLAN routing turned off and disabled port forwarding. So basically, in order to access the iDRAC of our servers, we actually use InTouch now. And so we find that to be incredibly more reliable, but also we can remotely reboot the servers. We can install operating systems on them and everything right via InTouch. And so kind of a neat feature there.
Yeah, I heard a customer of ours use a term that I really love because it just boils it all down, right? And they call it remote rack, right? That's kind of what InTouch is enabling. It's enabling that remote rack, so they can just reach out and deal with any device in that rack that doesn't matter where it is, right? That's the solution that InTouch is enabling, is that remote access to whatever stack of devices is wherever those are.
Somebody asked that it's not available for the device connector. I don't believe so, because you can't use the APs and stuff, and the device connector is an AP firmware. So it would have to be a SpeedFusion Connect enabled device, because we use SpeedFusion Connect for that. So that's a really good question. APs in router mode, device connectors, things like that don't have, it has to be a SpeedFusion Connect enabled device for InTouch to work.
Again, those are things that I think are possible, though. I mean, this is all, the glue's all there, right? We just got to kind of put it all together. So if there's a use case where that's needed, let us know, because again, we've got a lot of tools in the toolbox, but we just need to see what people are really trying to do or what problems people are trying to solve. Exactly.
Anyways, I think we can end a few minutes early. We've answered almost all the questions. If we haven't answered your question, it might be because I didn't feel like it was appropriate for the topic. Please, you can feel free to email Travis or myself, and we'd be more than happy to answer those questions. There's a couple questions about purchasing and things like that. Your question is visible. I just feel like it's not appropriate to talk about in an open forum like this. So please feel free to reach out. Peter at westnetworks.com. Travis, if you want to say your email address, you can. And
I'm just Travis at peplink.com.
Travis at peplink.com. And so Peter at westnetworks.com, Travis at peplink.com. And we'd be more than happy to answer those questions for you further if you have additional questions. But otherwise, I thank you so much for attending. And I look forward to seeing most of you next month when we do our next presentation, showing off more technologies.
Thanks so much, folks. Take care.
Have a good one.